Rebecca, thank you for coming on Rappahannock Radio. I'm so excited to have you on today and to finally connect with you. I know we've been following each other on the social media for a little while, but it's so good to have you on finally.
Thank you.
Yeah, so,
thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Good. First of all, I want to start off by saying I'm a huge fan of your voice. Like, your writing, I think, is phenomenal, but your voice is just so powerful. Like, it just really cuts through to, like, straight to my heart. And it's like old country sound, like really like classic country singer sound to me, and it's so powerful. Like, I haven't gotten the pleasure of seeing you perform in person yet, which hopefully after I have the baby and everything there'll be, a downtime, as you know, as a mom.
Yeah.
But go out again and start seeing you, because I've seen you in videos, and you're just like, the entire room is just like taken up by this beautiful space that your voice has. So thank you for bringing that into the world. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. So I want to talk a little bit about, like, to start, like, your background. So I know you're based in Harrisonburg.
Okay.
You have some Guam, right, background. Like, were you born in Guam, or what's sort of like the history there?
Yeah, so I was born in Guam. My dad is from Guam, Chamorro heritage, and then my mom is from Virginia.
Okay.
And they met in Guam. My grandparents were missionaries, and so they met in Guam. And my mom also worked on the military base.
Okay.
And my dad was in the military, so they met that way. And we moved back to the States when I was a young toddler, because he got stationed in Quantico. And so that's how we initially ended up back in Virginia. And then eventually my parents divorced, and I just moved to Mount Jackson with my mom, which is kind of where she's originally from.
Okay.
And so that's how I ended up in Virginia, and kind of surrounded by a lot of gospel music. I grew up in, like, independent fundamental Baptist church. So it was like church 3 times a week, lots of gospel, old bluegrass music, and just the area itself has a lot of country, gospel, bluegrass roots.
Yeah.
And so that's how I kind of got into the genre, and where my influences of a lot of my voice came from. My mom was a singer also. She sang in church, and she had a very big voice. And so I kind of had her as an influence, as well as big voices as I started to grow and start picking what music I wanted to listen to and who I wanted to lean into. Dolly was a big voice that my mom listened to. There's a tape, I can't remember what the tape is called, but I remember that Yellow Roses was on that tape. I actually have a tattoo, a tattoo tribute to Yellow Roses, Dolly Parton. And because we were involved in the church so much when I was so young, there was a song called He's Alive, which is like talking about the resurrection, and my mom would play that all the time, and it's like, the song is so huge. She's got like a full choir singing behind her at the end, and it's like a very storytelling song, which most of her music is. But that was just, I don't know, like, as a young child, it has like such a huge influence on you, and I feel like your taste changes as you get older, but when you grow up and you have such big voices as your introduction, it definitely affected me, of course. As you said, I'm definitely known for having like a big voice.
I love it. I love it. I just really do.
Thank you. There were definitely times where I like thought I needed to kind of like pull back and, not be too loud, not be too, I guess, in your face.
It's great though, because
with vocals.
I mean, because a lot of times, especially you're in there, you're in the trenches, so to speak, out there playing whatever gigs, right? And it's like, sometimes, especially as a solo artist, right, you can kind of like get hidden in the background of like the clanging of the glasses or something at the bar or wine or wherever you're playing, and people are talking, and then it's like you come in and it's like, boom, attention, everyone, this is happening. Like, I'm not in the background. I am the performer for tonight, which I love.
Yeah.
Taking that space is, it's not easy to do.
Thank you. I just played a singer-songwriter showcase Friday night, and with two women that I love, and they're amazing musicians. And it was one of the things that we really enjoyed was that the show was so diverse. Us as people, us as songwriters, our voices, our musicality, and my husband really likes to dote on me. He's very proud
That's awesome.
of my music and writing, and it's amazing to have so much support from him.
You have to have a partner like that. It really makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and he definitely pushes me to lean into whatever it is that I'm doing musically. And it's kind of funny that you said, like, I fill a room, because he was saying he really appreciates how he's like, it doesn't matter where you sing. When somebody walks in, they're going to hear you.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's just when I play, when I sing, when I write, it just kind of happens naturally, if that makes sense. Like, I do write songs where, I'm quieter, it's not like full belting, the whole song.
But there's a lot of dynamics in your songs too. I mean, you will build up as the song goes on, for the drama of it, or, for the storytelling and the drama of it, or, get quiet and then the chorus a little bit louder. So it's not like you're, I didn't mean to make it sound like the whole time you're just like, belting it out.
Oh, no.
For effect. Yeah, definitely it's happening.
Yeah. And the more that I play out, because I'd sang in bands and been the backup girl for a decade.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that experience, like your experience moving from like the church, the gospel, the choir music to like, and it's funny because my grandmother was a singer in church, an excellent singer, and she didn't consider herself a singer. And I'm like, no, you're still a singer. Like, you're still actively singing, you're participating in music. So I still consider that, an actual singer. But when did you like move into like the genre of more like performing outside of the church? What's that story like?
So as I got older, in high school and then into college, I definitely started separating myself from the church that I grew up in. Just started like having differences in beliefs and like, where I saw myself going. And sorry about that.
It's okay.
When I was in high school, I loved the movie Dirty Dancing, and somebody gave me the soundtrack for it. And that was really the first time that I had more diverse music introduced to me.
That's a great introduction.
What? It's like, what is this music that like sounds a little bit like what I've been raised around, but is like more raw and like more vulnerable. I mean, of course there's like some raunchy stuff, but it's like, I don't know, just like more in your face.
Right.
And about other things than spirituality. And so I kind of started to lean into that, and it might sound silly, but just like listening to Pandora and like having, like a Dirty Dancing station, and then like all these other songs are coming on, and just like, oh, I like that, going further into it. I didn't sing in school at all until graduation. A friend of mine was like on the Student Government Association and asked if I would sing at our graduation. And I said, sure, why not? And I sang. And after graduation, people are like, why did you never sing in school? Like, why are we like, just whoa. Like everybody's leaving, everybody's partying, and now you suddenly sing? But the way that our family life was set up, I was like a very important part of like helping with my younger siblings, and so there wasn't like a lot of room for extracurricular activities like chorus and those things that require a lot of time.
Yeah.
And so I just, I had an opportunity to sing, and so I did, and people enjoyed it. Then when I went to college, I relied a lot on scholarships, and the local pageants, you get scholarship money if you place or you win. And so I did a couple of those, and I won, and I got good scholarship money. And then I went on to compete for Miss Virginia, and you have to have a talent. And so it's like, oh, yay, well, I get to sing. And I actually sang for my Miss Virginia talent. I sang Broken Wing, Martina McBride. Yeah. And for the Miss Virginia stage, that probably wasn't a very strategic decision because, they like more like classical or kind of like poppy
like
ballads.
Celine Dion. You should have done the Titanic. My heart will go on.
But it was very freeing, and it kind of helped me realize, you really love music and you really love performing. And there's a locally taped show that used to air on RFD TV, which is a national network. But the local show is called Virginia Dreams, Center Stage. And because of like family connection, I knew the man who owned the television show and did the taping. And I just asked if I could come on as kind of like promo for doing Miss Virginia. And they had me on as a guest a few times, and I would sing with a band. And that was a lot of fun. And just kind of through that networking, got introduced to local band players here in Harrisonburg, Bridgewater area, and started singing with groups. I learned a lot about being invited to come sing as part of a group that was existing and kind of the dynamics. And for a while, I would be invited to come out and it'd be like, okay, you can sing, we're going to play this 3-hour show, and you can sing like 2 or 3 songs, and then we just need you to sing backup the rest of the time. And I didn't know any better, and I just thought it was a great chance to like get out and sing, because I didn't have really any other chance to do it. And then you start to grow and learn about things like getting paid and being appreciated for your contribution and booking. And, I can sing and I enjoy writing.
Yeah.
Back then I was always like a co-writer because I didn't play guitar at all.
Okay. that was going to be my next question to lead into is when did you bring guitar into your performances?
So I've had a guitar for a really long time, but I didn't actually start playing it until 2020.
Oh, wow.
When the pandemic started, yeah.
You're like, this is the time I can learn to play guitar.
Yeah, people would offer to like teach me guitar, and I share this experience because I've heard it from a lot of women, and a lot of times, people teaching you guitar is actually an advance for something else.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Or for ulterior motives. And, it took me a long time to understand when somebody was like genuinely interested in working with me and helping me grow as a musician or an artist, and when it was like, how can this situation benefit that person?
That's hard to tell. Yeah. It's hard to tell. I mean, especially when you're excited about being involved in a creative community and you want, your ideas and your creativity and your talent to be welcomed. And so it's hard to decipher what is going to be the best and most, symbiotic and not just like a succubus type relationship on that other person's part. Yeah. And I'd love to hear more about how you learned to decipher that. And especially I'm one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about as well is, obviously you're a woman and you're a woman in music and you're a mother in music, and like, how do you, traverse those two realms? Because a lot of times you hear, especially, I think we're probably around the same age, right? So like women at our age where they're like, you can't do both. Like, you're not going to be able to do both. Or like you have a family and now, well, you get better just put that out the window type of thing. And it's like, no, I refuse to believe that. Like, at all. I think that
Yeah.
you can be the most creative mom, and as a mom, and then that inspires you to then be like, God, I gotta go write this song. I have to like get out of this room for a second.
Oh,
and,
totally.
You know. So not to dissuade you from
Let me turn on the TV really quick so I can go write this song.
right. No, that
Yeah.
So yeah, deciphering. So you're talking about guitar, and you learned in 2020. We'll come.
Yeah.
We'll come back around.
Yeah.
Right? We'll branch.
Yeah. So backing up a little bit, I guess to like, how did I learn to decipher people's intentions? It took me a long time. I think when you're young, I heard someone else say this recently, and I think that it's true. When you're younger, I always had this mentality that like, people's intentions were always good.
Yeah.
You know, people just want to help you. People.
Me too. Yeah, I absolutely believe that.
It's positive. And so I was very naive and very gullible. And I was in a group and ended up in a relationship with one of the members. And it was very toxic and became like a negative domestic violence situation. And I had to I knew I needed to get out of that. And it took me a while because the cycle of abuse is very sneaky.
Yeah.
And we're also led to believe, you can't speak up, bear the weight of the world around you. And, if you speak out or you say something to kind of rock the boat, especially in a band dynamic or in a smaller community where people know a person in a certain light and they either ignore or don't acknowledge.
They think you're blowing it out of proportion.
Sides of a person. Yeah. Or we don't want to get involved. We're not in your personal business. We don't want to get involved. So that can definitely keep things kind of going and make it harder to get out of certain situations. And so it took me a while, but I did eventually get out of a very unhealthy relationship.
Good for you.
And I took a break from music because I just needed to, because my whole musical world at that point kind of revolved around that person and that relationship and the people that I met through that person. And it was very isolating, and I learned a lot about myself, and, I can be a strong person. It's not easy and it can be lonely, but, there are people out there that are for me, not relationship wise solely, but also music relationships, friendships.
Right.
And kind of just like built myself back. And
so being broken,
I tried to
brought you some clarity of like how to go forth and be like mindful of these individuals who don't have your best interest at heart.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I've had some negative relationships musically that weren't romantically involved either.
Yeah.
I have more recently learned about like give and take, and I'll have people reach out to me about opportunities or ways that I can help them, and then it isn't necessarily reciprocated. And so I've gotten a lot better. I think the mom in me is helping with this. Yeah. And just like putting my foot down and, the time that I put into music is more precious to me because it's taking away from time with my child or with my family.
Yeah.
And not that they suffer when I play music, but, I want my time to be taken seriously. I want to be taken seriously.
Exactly.
And I work really hard to build community with other musicians, other songwriters, especially women and, those with marginalized voices. But I don't have the time to give and not be offered respect in return. I had somebody reach out to me a few months ago about considering them for some shows that I was booking, because I was having a hard time getting on as an opener locally, and there's a venue, it's called the Golden Pony, and the owner, Paul, is amazing. And he was like, you know, if you want to put on a show, like, figure out what you want to do, who you want to have play, let me know, just, you know, you handle it. And so I started producing shows at that venue to play shows myself, and then also try and like grow a little bit more community and welcome other people in. So I had somebody reach out to me about booking them for that show, and they also book shows in their area. And I just said, well, you know, I would love to be considered for the show that you're doing. And they said, well, you know, for this show, you really have to have a guaranteed draw of 15 to 20 people. And if you haven't really played shows in this area, I don't think you could do that. So, you know, I don't think it would be a good fit for right now. And
wow.
I just, you know, we were on the phone, and I just kind of like rolled my eyes and was like, wow. It takes a lot of guts to say that to somebody.
It's funny. I recently had that happen with of a winery like gig of all things, and somebody was like, and I mean, I could feel from the conversation that this person's hands were kind of tied by like the person who owned the place and their, you know, how they usually pay people. But it was like, they started off by saying, what do I usually charge? And I told them, and then the response was, well, this is what we pay. And it was extremely low for like a 3-hour set. And then it was like, well, it depends on how the audience responds and how many people you bring out. And it was like, well, first of all, this is a winery. So it's not like people are just coming to see that. And also it doesn't change the amount of work that you're doing or the effort that you're putting in or what it takes me to pack up and show up and, you know, cover songs, but also produce my own songs, and for 3 hours. So it was just sort of, and I know these are not necessarily like the same type of venues that we're talking about, but still it felt like really like personal, like hurtful, because it was like how.
Yeah, it's insulting.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I don't know that it's always, you know, venues' intention. Everyone's trying to make money and everyone's trying to support themselves, but it definitely has to be taken into consideration. Like, I don't just show up and like hit a button and everything like pops up and, you know, the show just happens.
Right.
Like,
there's driving, you know,
I
there's
have to
prep,
like,
there's all this other stuff.
Yeah. I've got to practice, you know, I've got to maintain my instrument, you know, both vocally and if you have a physical instrument. So,
and
luckily, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, have you gotten that type of... So I used to get that when I was playing in a band years ago, and I was trying to book some places in Charlottesville, and they were basically like, well, are you a cover band? And what covers do you do? And I was like, well, I do my original stuff and a few, you know, kind of pretty obsolete, like Bob Dylan covers or something in there.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, then no, because we want people to come out and drink, and that's the whole thing. And so I was just curious, you being someone who's a singer-songwriter, how have you faced that hurdle? Like, have you had that happen where, you know what I mean? Like,
definitely.
Not playing as many covers type of thing?
Yeah. Well, when I was playing in bands before, they were essentially all cover bands. You know, we'd throw in some originals, but most of the material was covers. And I just didn't enjoy those experiences. They weren't fulfilling for me musically.
Right.
And so this time around, solo, I have decided, you know, I may suffer as far as how many gigs I get on the books, but I really want the bookings that I take to be intentional. I want them to be meaningful for me. I think there's always going to be like something that you do as like a moneymaker.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I just need a little more exposure, or, you know, I'm going to do this as a favor, take a little cut here, and then try and like make it back another way.
Those tricky exposure gigs, right?
But yeah. I mean, if I played for exposure, I'd be playing like 5 nights a week.
Right.
But, and you know, my husband and I actually talked about this because he was just like asking, you know, why I wasn't playing in town more, like here in Harrisonburg. And, you know, some of the venues that I've played in the past, why I wasn't playing them now. And I said that, you know, I just tried to explain to him that I've sold my soul for like a decade and playing those shows and just being background noise. And, you know, you can make quick money that way, but the people aren't really there to listen to your music, or you for that matter. Like, you're basically just a jukebox to them.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to sound like I'm taking away from people who go out and play cover shows, because it's hard. Like, playing 3 hours of music with one 15-minute break is so hard. Yeah. And that's why it's not.
I do it all the time.
Yeah. I can't physically play 3 hours of music. I don't, you know, I play a couple of covers, but I have kind of purposefully not gone down that road, because I am afraid of, once I start going back down the cover show road, that I'm just going to get kind of sucked into it. Yeah.
And then people try and suck you into that too. Like, I remember somebody was giving me a tip at my last gig, and they were like, do you know any Eagles? Like, I was the jukebox, like, as the tip was supposed to represent, like, hey, I'm giving you a tip. Now you need to play this song. But, I mean, that's excellent that you're in a position you can do that. Do you do music full time? That's your, like, no. Okay.
No. Yeah, I'm full-time mom, and I don't have another job. I play music.
That's excellent, though.
I'm everything, you know. Yeah, I'm very fortunate. My husband works very hard, and right now we're in a place where, when I play, money that I make from playing goes back into recording projects, travel expenses, because it's expensive to drive and play shows,
especially with gas.
I mean, even before gas started going up. Yeah, especially with gas. But even before then, it's like, you know, you take a show in DC and you have to drive. I have to drive 4.5, 5 hours round trip. You know, I gotta get gas. I've got to eat. I've got to feed myself.
Right, and then there's all the other stuff.
Make sure my car's maintained.
Like, not that you wear a bunch of big costumes, but, like, I mean, that's still, like, time to do, like, the makeup, the hair, the, you know, if you have the fancy boots, the, you know, there's a whole element that goes into the atmosphere and the look of your music as well, which I also love. I love your look.
Thank you.
It's very vintage.
Thank you.
Very beautiful.
And with a little one. Thank you. With a little one too, you know, I have to pay for childcare as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We have some family that helps out occasionally, but it's like, if I go play a show that I have to drive to, I mean, I've got to have a sitter here with my child before I leave, and until either me or my husband gets home. So, you know, that's another expense. So I'm fortunate that I don't have to rely on music as a source of income for our family and caring for, you know, regular expenses. But promotion and videos and recordings,
those are all really expensive.
Music videos, it's all expensive, yeah. And so it's like everything is kind of like, what comes in just immediately goes out.
Yeah.
And especially when you're trying to grow your audience, you know, playing a show that's a couple hours away, I'm going to pay a little bit more for travel expenses, but, you know, opening for a larger name act or playing a show in DC where I'm going to be playing for a room of people who've never heard of me, but half of that room is like going to go follow me online or go stream my music because they're actually there to listen to music and songwriting. It's beneficial.
Yeah, they're actual patrons of the art. They're not just there, like, and they happen to see you somewhere and they're like, oh, this is really cool. They're there to discover you, like to discover other artists and what they're doing and invest in that whole creativity and that creative community. Mm-hmm. So that's really cool. And I understand exactly why you're doing that. Was this, so, I mean, you're talking about having, without getting like too personal with it, but conversations with your husband about, you know, why you made these choices and stuff like that. So was it always, when you went back, when you started learning guitar in 2020 and you're really, you know, you decided to pour this energy, this creativity into you and focus on, you know, being very selective about where you wanted to play and what you wanted to do, was that like a big family decision? Like, was that like, hey, instead of, I mean, it's always hard for a mom after they have a kid. It's like, what are you going to do? Can you be a stay-at-home mom? That's the first question, right? Can you even do that? Can you even afford that? It's really difficult for women to afford that in this day and age, to be able to stay home, which sucks. It just sucks that we're put in that position where you have to choose. So there's that question, right? And then there's like, okay, well, what can I do that will, if I am going to go back to work, that will be supportive to the fact that I have a young child that needs my attention constantly. So how did you guys balance that? Like, did you just kind of come up with it naturally? Because that's a hard, those are hard decisions.
Yeah. Before I gave birth, I was very set on I was going to go back to work after my 10 to 12 weeks of maternity leave. And, Ripley was going to go into childcare. And it was so expensive for childcare. And we were crunching the numbers, we'd kind of figured it out. And what I was going to be making at my full-time job, where I was like a certified health professional, I was going to basically be bringing home negative dollars after insurance and childcare. And then I gave birth.
So you're paying for someone else to take care of your kid.
Yeah. I'm working so then I can pay someone else to take care of my child, and then I'm actually not bringing home any income after that. Yeah. And then also like losing the time with that child and, all the things that come with it. Kudos to all of the families and parents and women that do that every day. But a couple of days after I had him, I looked at my husband and I said, I don't think I can hand him over to a stranger in 12 weeks. And a friend of ours who's older and actually doesn't have children, she's in her 70s, I think. I was talking to Mary Jane because she had been asking me, if I was going to go back to work, if I was going to stay home. And I was like, no, I before I had Ripley, I was like, no, I'm going to go back to work. And she's like, why are you so dead set on going back to work? I was like, it's what I need to do. And she said, she looked at me and she smiled and she said, just so you know, being a mother doesn't define you, but also having a job outside the home does not define you either.
Wow.
And it just...
That's really good.
It really hit me in the gut, because it was like, in my head and based off of, societal pressures that are just out there, I really felt like, I can be a mom and I need to have a full-time job.
You can do it all, and you have to do it all, and you should. Yeah. And if not, you're like less of a woman or something you're doing.
And no one had said like, you can do either of these things. Of course we have to work it out financially, but it's like if you pick this one thing to do and you don't do both, that doesn't mean that you're any less of a person. It doesn't mean that you're any less of a woman, any less of a mother. And so that really helped me make the decision to stay home. Fast forward 5.5, 6 months, the pandemic started, and, we had already adjusted our life and our finances so I could stay home. And then, daycares were shutting down. And it was like, if I was working in the health field that I was working in, I wouldn't have been able to not go to work.
Right.
I would have been an essential worker, and I would have had to have gone to work, and then
exposed
our infant,
to this
I would have, I would be exposed, and I would have had to have found alternative childcare, like at the drop of a hat, because the daycares were shutting down. And so it was a very positive thing for us that I had already decided to stay home after I gave birth, because the transition during the lockdown was definitely still hard. But as far as like having to find childcare and having to worry about, carrying something back to your child or their care just in general was already sorted out. Yeah. It was hard for me mentally. One of the things that I didn't know about motherhood before I went into it was how isolating it can be. And I already had a history of depression that was managed, but after you give birth, there's postpartum, baby blues, just anxiety can churn up in you naturally because of so many changes. And then to have the pandemic on top of it, it was like motherhood was already isolating in all these ways. And then it's like you go into lockdown. It's like compounded.
Sorry, I'm only laughing because that's the only way I know how to handle it, because I completely feel you. I completely understand. And it sounds like our little boys are like around the same age. Like I think we gave birth like pretty much around the same time. So I was definitely going through the same thing during the same time periods. But on the other side of it, which is me being like, I had 3 days after my son was born as well, looking at him and being like, I can't go back to work, but feeling like I didn't have the choice not because I wasn't supported by my partner, but because I felt those societal pressures and felt like, okay, well, I have great health care with this job. Like it was a solid job. It was nothing that like I had my heart into, but it was like, it was a local government job. Like it was just really solid. And everybody was kind of just like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but like that would be foolish to give it up type of thing. And then the pandemic happened and it was like, I was so concerned and freaked out that I was going, because I was an essential worker because I worked for the government, being out, coming back, worried I was going to give something to my infant, and then just like, just basically depressed, like very isolated in a different way, but in like the mom kind of like playing Atlas type of role. I feel like I don't know if that's a combination of society or stuff that we do naturally as women, but I feel like we just kind of like, I'm going to carry everybody's problems plus my own on my back and I'll be fine type of thing when it's like, we need a break too. Like, and I feel like music has definitely been my outlet for that. And it sounds like music is your outlet for that as well.
Oh yeah. I was already missing music after I gave birth, because I was doing shows with the band that I was in until I was 9 months pregnant, and then it was August, and I think one of the shows, it was like 95 degrees out, and with humidity it was like 105, and it was an outdoor show, and they had a fan for me that was like this big, and blew a breeze on my ankles. I'm being a little dramatic, but it was very physically hard. Yeah. And it was a cover band, so I was singing for 3 hours.
Yeah. Jeez.
And even not pregnant, that's like a marathon. And then pregnant and the heat and very pregnant. I was just like, I can't, I'm sorry guys, but I can't do this anymore. And the band had already been together before I joined them, so they
were okay.
Could still fulfill the shows that they were doing. Yeah.
So your plan was you were just going to keep playing for like basically until you went into labor, like you didn't have a cutoff time. You were like, let's just go for it.
I foolishly had said, I think I can play until like 2 weeks before my due date.
That's what I just did. My last gig is this weekend. I'm kind of like, why did I do that?
Yeah. So we can do it all, right?
Absolutely.
So I also didn't play an instrument, so it's like I wasn't trying to like maneuver a guitar over a pregnant belly, but I thought that I was going to play up until 2 weeks, and my due date was in October. But the whole pregnancy, I'd kind of felt like I was a little ahead. But then, the beginning of August, I was just like, I cannot do this. And there was a little bit of tension with the group, not the whole group, but
within the group, yeah.
For out of the kindness of my heart, I'm not going to name names.
But was it like male, female tension?
Oh, it was male. Yeah. I've always been in male bands, and then, I started playing solo, so I didn't have to.
Well, the majority of musicians out there doing it are male. I mean, that's the other thing that we face.
Yeah, and so, when I bowed out of the one show, it was kind of like, oh, it wasn't that bad, blah, 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 and it's like, you will never understand.
That's not for you to say. That is not for you to say.
What all of this entails. Yeah, Yeah. And so, I finally had to end up bowing out and just saying, I'm not going to be able to play any more shows. And I actually had Ripley 2.5 weeks early, but he was like full early from his due date, but he was fully developed. Yeah. And they actually said, like, we probably would have had to make you go sooner because he was almost 8 pounds when he was born 2.5 weeks early. But anyways, yeah, after I gave birth, I was asked, like, well, how long are you going to take off? Like, when are you going to be back? And it's like, I just gave birth to a human being. Like, I don't know when I'm going to be able to come back to playing 3-hour shows. There's a lot involved. And I just didn't feel like I was given a lot of consideration for as much time and energy as I had put in. And this was also a group that played locally. It wasn't like we were a nationally touring band and I was like contracted.
Right. And like you said, it's a cover band, so it's not like, I mean, no offense to cover bands. Again, I know we're not dismissing that at all. It's still important work and you're still out there, working your ass off, but it's not like, I mean, most cover bands are not really like rising above the rest of the stuff that's happening on, like they have a local circuit and that kind of just stays there.
Yeah. And they were, like I said, they were a band before I even joined them. So it wasn't like if I didn't do the shows, they were going to lose all their bookings.
Right. So they were putting a lot of
I wasn't going to be there, but
unnecessary pressure on you.
Yeah. And I just didn't like the way that it felt.
Yeah.
And eventually the communication stopped, and then a show was played with a band member that I had played with in the past that I had had the unhealthy relationship with years ago. And I had said, because it had been brought up when I was still in the band, and I said, I will play basically any show, but I will not play a show with this person.
That's valid.
For my emotional safety and for just my safety in general, I don't want to go back to that place. It isn't necessary for me to play shows with this individual. And so that was a boundary that I had set up when I was actively in the band. And so then after I had taken off for giving birth, they played several shows with that person. And I was just like, this is my sign that I don't need to return to this band. Because, I was told, well, that was a personal situation and we don't want to get involved, but I call bullshit. I could understand if, like, we went out to lunch and I paid and I thought I was going to get reimbursed and this person didn't pay me back. Like, that is like a personal matter, a small whatever. But like a history of physical and emotional abuse and domestic violence, like, that's a whole other thing. Yeah. And if I can't be granted enough respect for those boundaries to be acknowledged and accepted, then those aren't the people that I need to play with.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so before that, had you done any solo work at all? Besides, like, okay.
No.
So now you're like, this is me. I got to do it. Like, and it was time.
Yeah. I hadn't started writing yet. I hadn't started playing yet, but I had decided that I wasn't going to go back with that group and was just kind of unsure about when I was going to get back to music. And then the pandemic happened and I was like, I've got to do something for my mental health and, getting out of my head and getting some of these things that I'm coming up with, like songs, lyrics, like organizing them and trying to do something with them. And so I had a guitar that I'd had for a long time, just didn't play. And I started just like looking at chord sheets and like trying to learn chords and watching, there's this guy on YouTube, his name's Marty, and I forget what his channel's
YouTube
called.
is so helpful.
But just like playing along to his YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you basically, I mean,
Playing along to his YouTube
self-taught
videos.
though. Like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. In the beginning, and I had a friend who played music, and I would like send him little video, like little what are they, voice memos of things, and it's basically me just doing like single strums and like singing lines. Like, what do you think of this? Does this sound okay? Like, does this make sense? And he just was like very encouraging, and my husband was very encouraging. And I just kind of like kept chugging along at it, and yeah, just kept playing. And then I wrote a couple songs, would just play at home. I was like beefing myself up online though, you know, like, oh, I'm doing some solo stuff. I'm like writing some music. Started talking about recording, and then I did that basically for a year because, you know, everything was shut down.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really any shows happening. And then 2021, I booked a show, like an acoustic songwriter showcase that was like a benefit show. And I had started recording with a friend. I had one recording process going on, and it just wasn't working out. It didn't feel right. You know, like there wasn't like any animosity. It wasn't like we had like a terrible time together. It was just we were having a hard time getting together. We started recording and things just didn't seem to be going the direction that I wanted them to, but I couldn't express, I didn't feel like I could express being dissatisfied because we had a friendship, and it, I just felt like I couldn't speak up. And it wasn't that he had done anything or said anything to tell me that I couldn't. It was just, you know how you can be friends with people, but you can't live with them?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was kind of like that situation.
Well, and it can be hard.
You know, we were good friends, but the recording process just wasn't like meshing.
Yeah. And it's hard to, I mean, you have to find a good, you know, something that really jives to get your music, your original music across, because it's not like you're working from a template of a song that you already know. It's like you're trying to create the sound as it's being recorded and make it sound the way it sounds in your head, which is extremely difficult. And if the relationship with the person who's doing the recording and the producing, it's like they're not, if you guys aren't connecting in a way that helps the song go forward, then it's not really happening. So yeah, I completely understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. So I reached out to a couple people about recording and what their process was like. And I reached out to, his name's Jacob, and I had met him. He's a drummer for some friends. We would just like play at another friend's house and just like kick back and like do little jams. And I would sing a couple songs with them when they would do it. And I knew that he did recording. He's in Richmond. And I reached out to him if he would be interested on taking on a new project and, you know, what it would look like for him. And we did a call. And basically, as soon as I answered the phone and he just said, "Hey, how you doing?" It was like this weird, almost like eerie. I hadn't really experienced it before. It was just like this eerie sense of peace came over me. And our whole conversation just went really well. It was very easy to talk to him and describe to him like what I was doing and what I wanted. And I talked to a couple other people about recording, and I just kept like coming back to him.
Yeah.
And I reached out to another friend who had worked with him and was like, you know, I think I'm going to work with him, but I don't want to just go with like the first person that I talk to. And the person told me like, no, don't walk, run to work with him. He's amazing. You know, they gave me like this long list of like reasons why I should work with him. And it was, I would say musically, it's probably like top 3 decisions that I've made as far as like my music and solo and songwriting, was just like taking the initiative to not continue with a process that wasn't going well and just decide to move on and see where it would go.
Yeah.
And yeah, we worked so well together.
And so Jacob recorded Prime Rainbow Conditions.
Yeah, he recorded my EP. He did any drums or percussion you hear on there, he did that. And he produced it. It was very much like a give and take process, though. It wasn't like I went in, played the songs, and he was like, okay, you're going to do this, 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 and this. Everything was very much a conversation. He has the engineering and the mixing experience, and so, he guided me through all of that. But it was an awesome experience to work with him. And the way that, we talked about the recordings, I didn't want them to be overly produced.
Right.
I wanted it, because I was trying to book myself as like a singer-songwriter for openers or for showcases, I wanted it to sound like what I sound like when I come and play on stage.
Yeah, that makes sense. You don't want to have this huge backing and then people are like, oh, it sounds so like so much less than it was on the recording.
Yeah.
It's like, no, just sound like the way you're going to sound.
Yeah.
It's also true to sort of like the country roots and like the genre that you're doing. It's like, this is straight up what, it's about my voice and the story, right? And everything else is just accompaniment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't want to, which we started recording a single recently, and that is going to be full band, but,
That's
I
exciting.
didn't want to, I didn't want to put a debut out full band and then only be booking myself as a solo show, singer-songwriter.
Do you hope to get a band, like collect a band, like the Rebecca Porter band?
Yeah.
That would be very exciting.
I don't know what it would be called yet.
So you wouldn't just have it be like
definitely,
Rebecca. You wouldn't just bill yourself as Rebecca Porter. You would have like a band name, or like Rebecca Porter with or something.
I don't know. I mean, it'll definitely be Rebecca Porter, but I always kind of like the and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like that little added thing to it. And I mean, I always will be doing singer-songwriter, playing stuff like that. I have a long way to go before I feel like I book like full band shows. But I definitely have the itch for it. When we started recording the single that we're working on, that was the first that I had sat down and played with a drummer and a bass player in a room together. I've only played with another guitar player twice.
You mean with your original music?
It was such a cool... Yeah. It was such a cool experience to like sit down and play with other musicians and like have them following my song that I wrote and asking, do you like this? Do you want me to do something different? Because when we recorded Prime Rainbow Conditions, that all happened, but we were never all together recording. Yeah. It was all separate. So to sit down and like be in the room, like playing as a band, it was very
with
cool.
you as the leader.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah. It's a lot of responsibility.
It is, but it's fun though. It's very empowering. I mean, and it sounds like you are definitely in the Phoenix stage of your, you're in the rising stage here of your life.
Thank you.
So it's exciting to see. What do you have? You're very welcome. What do you have? Like, what are your aspirations with your music? Like, do you hope, like, are you like, you want to be like, like Dolly Parton big, like Shania Twain big? Like, yeah, I see the big smile on your face. Do you see that?
I mean, that would be amazing. I don't know that I have, like end goal aspirations, if that makes sense. I think I'm almost like afraid of it. Like if I set a bar, will it, like that specific, will it cause me to like not work as hard because I'm like, well, I can just coast until I like get, not that you can coast to become Dolly Parton,
but I hear what you're saying. Like, will it help or hinder the process? Yeah.
I definitely want to keep growing.
Yeah.
I definitely want to open, and I've been putting out feelers and putting out emails and for opener slots for nationally touring bands or artists. So I used to be afraid of making big asks, but if you don't ask big, you get nothing. If you ask big and you're rewarded, you're rewarded big. So I'm trying to be a little more gutsy about reaching out for gigs.
Yeah. And know that you're worth it.
Like, it also challenges.
You're talented. You've got.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, it's a hard thing to do, and especially if you're somebody. I mean, you seem like a very. I mean, from our hour-long conversation now, like a very sensitive person, right? So, like, and that can be. That can be a very dangerous thing in a lot of ways, right? But especially for putting yourself out there. I mean, you don't want to be the person that's just like, oh, I am so great and that's it. And everybody else can just kind of like, part the seas around me, right? It's like, but there's something to be said for holding your space and being like what you're doing. No, I am worth this. I'm worth this amount of money. I'm worth playing this show with these people and not being afraid of hearing no. Not being afraid of hearing people be like, well, we just don't think you're ready. I mean, you've heard that. You've heard your fair share of that. And you're like, well, then that person can miss out on me. I mean, that takes a lot of guts and a lot of energy, a lot of, again, it's the mom thing coming out, right? To be able to, to just put your foot down and, be like, no, this is what we're doing. That's so kudos to you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Snap it up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've been told no a lot, and I haven't been picked or chosen for opportunities that I thought, I was very ready for. I mean, that happens to everybody.
Yeah.
I think I am getting a little bit better at taking it in stride and not getting wounded by a no.
Yeah.
Another music friend of mine, Amy Martin, we message back and forth all the time about shows and gigs and promo. And I was talking with her, and she said, a no is not a no forever. It's a no for right now. And so trying to keep that spirit and keep reaching out. If you hear a no or you don't hear back about something, just keep trying until you're given no.
Yeah.
And even then, keep working for something else.
And you've heard a lot of yes too. I mean, I don't want to
definitely
discredit that. You've had
yeah. And I mean, I've only been writing songs solo and for 2 years, and I've only been playing shows out solo for almost a year. So I think
you've had a great response.
I do try to give myself credit in that, I've had a good response. I'm growing my audience, growing, the people who really enjoy what I do and appreciate it and want to support me and want to hear more. But I also, I've taken breaks from music in the past, like I mentioned earlier, and every time I take a break, I always want to come back. I always want to do more. It just is very personally fulfilling. The songs that I write, they're not all biographical, but they're very personal to me. So it is, in many ways, like a form of therapy. And I like being able, I would say, it is harder for me to connect with people on a one-on-one or I hope this is making sense. It's much easier for me to get on stage and play songs that I wrote in a very vulnerable time and connect with people that way than it is for me to be in the crowd and connect with people in that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. You're I speak through music. I speak in song. I connect through song.
Yeah.
You're let me show you my most vulnerable moment here, and then we'll be
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I have a song. It's very vulnerable. It's called The Lonely Song. It hasn't been recorded yet. I definitely want to record it sometime soon. But I don't know if it gets much more vulnerable than that. But yeah, I feel very strongly that I, was meant to be a mom, and I'm a damn good mother. And I also feel very strongly that I was meant to be a songwriter and a singer and, connect with people in that way. And I know I'm a damn good singer. I am getting a lot more confident about my songwriting. And yeah, I just, if nothing else, I love doing it. So why the hell not?